Chapter 6. The Hole She Called a Window. The little Husseins grasped the seriousness of the house renovation when their parents kept them home from school, now back in session. For the next 3 days, even 6-year-old hands would have assignments, the first of which was to drag everything in their hut onto the Maidan. The rusty bed came out first, and Karam and Zeronisa settled in, guarding their possessions from passers-by, while watching Abdul direct his sibling labor crew. "Finally, my kitchen!" Zeronisa said, leaning into her husband, her headscarf slipping down to her shoulders. "Look at Adhar," said Karam after a while. Their third son was furiously stirring cement to keep it from hardening in the day's oppressive heat. "I despair because he has no brains. 8th grade and can't write the number 8. But he works hard, like Abdul, not afraid of labor." "He'll be okay," Zeronisa agreed. Her 5th son, Safdar, was the child she worried about. He was dreamy and impractical, like her husband. He loved frogs, and in pursuit of them sometimes swam the sewage lake. No one liked to sleep next to him after he did that. Asha's husband, Mahadeo, materialized at the bedside. Slight and weathered, he was monosyllabic when sober, as he'd been since Asha found a cleverer hiding space for her purse. In hopes of relieving this painful condition, he offered his construction skills to the Husseins for 100 rupees. Abdul, who didn't quite know what he was doing, was glad for Mahadeo's help. Asha was the only one in that family who unnerved him. "I think she's mad in her ambitions," Abdul's father had said a few nights earlier. "She wants a shining public life, wants to be some big politician, when her private life is so shameful. Does she think other people can't hear her fight with her husband at night?" Their fights were indeed as loud as the ones between Fatima the One-Leg and her husband. Asha, it was rumored, always won. As Mahadeo and the Hussein children worked, some of Manju's students wandered over, curious. Manju would soon be calling them to class, but in the meantime they perused the Hussein possessions, piled up on the Maidan. Adults also came to look. Only a handful of neighbors had been inside the Hussein's hut, but to judge by the piles, the Muslim garbage people were less poor than had been assumed. Many Anawadians recalled how much the Husseins had lost in the 2005 deluge. Their youngest daughter had nearly drowned, and their clothing, rice stores, and savings of 5,000 rupees had washed away. Now they had had a roughly carpentered wooden cupboard for their clothing, a cupboard twice as large as Asha's. A small television bought on an installment plan, 2 thick cotton quilts, 1 blue and white checked, 1 chocolate brown, 11 stainless steel plates, 5 cooking pots, fresh cardamom and cinnamon, superior to the spices most Anawadians used, a cracked mirror, a tube of brill cream, a big bag of medicines. The rusty bed, most people in the slum, Asha included, slept on the floor. "Everyone is jealous of us fixing our house," Kakashin explained to an older cousin who'd just arrived from the countryside. "So let them be jealous," Zeronisa exclaimed. "Why shouldn't we live in a better room now that we are doing a little better?" Still, she decided to entrust the television to the brothel keeper for the duration of their repair work. No onlookers asked, "Why fix a house when the airport authority might demolish it?" Almost everyone here improved his hut when he was able, in pursuit not just of better hygiene and protection from the monsoon, but of protection from the airport authority. If the bulldozers came to flatten the slum, a decent hut was seen as a kind of insurance. The state of Maharashtra had promised to relocate those families who had squatted at the airport since 2000 to tiny apartments and high-rises. To Anawadians, a difficult-to-raise house increased the odds that a family's tenure on airport land would be acknowledged by the relocation authorities, and so they put their money into what would be destroyed. To Abdul, fixing the family hut seemed unwise for reasons that had nothing to do with the airport authority. To him, it was like standing on the roof bragging that a Muslim family was out-earning the Hindus. Why throw ghee on an open flame? His mother's new tile floor would in any case get carpeted in garbage. Had the family funds been at his disposal, he would have bought an iPod. Murchie had told him about this iPod, and while Abdul knew little of music, he had been enchanted by the concept. A small machine that let you hear only what you wanted to hear. A machine to drown out your neighbors. The window that would let out the cooking smoke was finished the first day, and on the second day the children turned to breaking the cracked stone floor and leveling it in preparation for tiles. Ceramic tiles, Zeranisa instructed her husband, who felt well enough to go and shop for them. 2-year-old Lalu, unhappy at being excluded from the construction work, applied a rag to his father's shoes for the momentous outing. Shortly after noon, Karam put 2,000 rupees in his pocket and left for a small tile shop in Sakinaka. Abdul was glad to see him go. Delay was a specialty of his father, and Abdul hoped to finish the work by nightfall. "You're all hammering too loud. I can't hear my radio," Fatima yelled through the wall after a while. The younger Hussein boys looked at one another amused. Each of the last 3 times they made small repairs to their house, she'd thrown one of her famous fits. "We're breaking the floor, putting in a kitchen," Zeranisa called back. "I wish the tiles and shelf would magically jump into place, but they won't, so there will be some noise today." Abdul ignored the exchange, intent on his own problem. His mother's cooking shelf was driving him mad. The 4-foot gray slab was uneven, as was the floor, so the shelf wobbled perilously on 2 supports he'd built to hold it up. Nothing in this idiot house was straight. The only way to stabilize the shelf and make it level would be to cut into the brick wall itself uneven and cement the slab in place. Asha's husband being too hungover to work today, another neighbor had offered to help, for money up front. This man seemed wobbly too, but Abdul put it out of his head as the 2 of them began chipping away at the brick. Zeranisa said, "We'll really hear from the one leg now." 30 seconds later, Fatima began to shout, "What's happening to my wall?" "Don't take tension, Fatima," Zeranisa called back. "We're doing the shelf now. Just give us this day. We also want it done fast, before the rains come." Abdul kept working. He was a categorizer of people as well as garbage, and as distinctive as Fatima looked, he considered her a common type. At the heart of her bad nature, like many bad natures, was probably envy, and at the heart of envy was possibly hope that the good fortune of others might one day be hers. His mother claimed that back when every life at Anawadi was roughly equal in its misery, neighborly resentments didn't get out of hand, though Zeranisa was known to be sentimental about history. "You bastards! We're going to break down my wall." Fatima again. "Your wall," said Zeranisa, irritated. "We built this wall and never took a paisa from you. Shouldn't we be allowed to put a nail in it from time to time? Be patient. If anything happens, we'll repair it once the shelf is in." Fatima went quiet until the bricks began crumbling on her side. "There is rubble in my rice," she shouted. "My dinner is ruined. Sand is spraying everywhere." Abdul was dismayed. The readiness of the bricks to disintegrate, long suspected, was now confirmed. They'd been made with too much sand, and the mortar between them had deteriorated. Crap bricks that weren't even glued to one another. Less a wall than a tremulous stack. As he considered how to install the kitchen ledge without toppling the whole house, Zeranisa went outside. So did Fatima, and the 2 women started shoving each other. Neighbors came to watch, the children debating which of the 2 women was more like the great Kali, an Indian fighter in the World Wrestling Entertainment franchise. "If you don't stop breaking my house, motherfucker, I'll put you in a trap," shouted Fatima. "It's my wall to break, prostitute," Zeranisa shouted back. "If we'd waited for you to build a wall, we'd all still be seeing each other naked." Abdul ran outside and pushed the 2 women apart. Taking his mother by the neck, he dragged her back home. "Don't you have children?" he said, disgusted. "You're no better than the one leg, fighting outside in front of everyone." Such scenes violated his first principle of Anawadi: don't call attention to yourself. "But she used bad language first," his mother protested. "This woman talks badly to her own man," Abdul said. "Would she hesitate to throw bad words at you? But you didn't have to throw them back at her. She has a crack in her. She's cracked. You know this." Fatima was still swearing when she crossed the Maidan and departed on Awadi. Abdul heard female neighbors laughing at her as she went, but the things that females laughed at did not interest him. He registered only that Fatima's absence gave him a chance to finish installing the ledge in peace, except that the neighbor he'd hired to help him had now collapsed, taking the slab down with him. "You are drunk," Abdul accused his neighbor, who was pinned to the floor by the stone. The man could not deny it. He had advanced TB and explained, "Lately, if I don't drink, I don't have the strength to lift anything." Abdul felt like crying when he saw the wall's fresh degradation. Fortunately, the stone hadn't broken when it fell, and the neighbor seemed sobered by the accident. He assured Abdul that they could finish the job in an hour. Abdul calmed himself by imagining that if his mother had a nicer house, she might start practicing a nicer way of speaking. But now a neighbor arrived to report an extraordinary sight. Fatima, a woman with few rupees to spare, had been seen riding off in an auto rickshaw. Another report 15 minutes later, Fatima was in Sahar police station, accusing Zaranisa of violent assault. "Ah, la," said Zaranisa. "When did she become such a liar?" "Go quickly," Kashan told her mother. "If you don't go to the station fast, they will have only her story to judge by." Karam returned home as his wife was departing. Tiles were more expensive than he'd realized, and he'd been 200 rupees short. She told him, "Stop delaying. Get the money. Buy the tiles. If the police come and see all that we have outside, they'll clean us out." The younger boys were already picking up the family possessions and tossing them into the storeroom. "Don't worry about me," Zaranisa told Abdul. "Just don't stop working. Get it done." When Zaranisa reached the station, winded from the half-mile run, Fatima was sitting at a desk telling her story to a tall female officer named Kulkarni. "This is the one who beat me, and you see I am a cripple with only one leg," Fatima said. "I did not beat her," Zaranisa protested. "So many people were outside watching, and not one would say I did. She came and started a fight. They broke my wall, got sand in my rice. She said she wanted to put us in a trap, when all we do is work and mind our own business." Fatima was crying, so Zaranisa turned on her own waterworks. The officer put up her palms. "Are you women mad, bothering us like this? You think the police have nothing better to do than listen to you fighting about some small thing? We are protecting the airport. You go home and cook your dinner and mind your children," she told Fatima. To Zaranisa, she said, "You, sit over there." Zaranisa took a seat on a row of bucket chairs and doubled over. Now her tears were real. Fatima had put her in a trap, as threatened. She would soon be back at Anawadi telling everyone that the police were holding Zaranisa like a common criminal. When she recovered from her bout of sobbing, Asha was in the seat beside her. Asha had been helping some police officers find a government-subsidized apartment in which to conduct a side business, brokering work for which she hoped to earn real money. The potential profit to be made by patching up a dispute between two Muslims would be small. However, if she didn't handle the petty conflicts at Anawadi, people would start turning to a woman from the Congress Party whom everyone called White Sari, and corporator Subhash Sawant would hear about it. Asha met Zaranisa's eye. For 1,000 rupees, Asha said, she'd convince Fatima to make no further trouble. The money wouldn't be for Asha herself. She would put some of it, in Fatima's hand. Asha wasn't always this explicit about money, but she felt she had to be with Zaranisa. Murchi had once been picked up by the police for buying stolen goods, and Zaranisa had begged for Asha's help. Asha had impressed on the officers that Murchi was a child and unwell, which happened to be true, for he had 6 badly infected rat bites on his butt. When Asha brought Murchi home, Zaranisa had thanked her, as if she didn't know what Asha's help had become a business. But Zaranisa distrusted Asha as much as Asha distrusted her. Asha was Shiv Sena, anti-Muslim, like many of the officers in the station. "We'll work it out with Fatima's husband," Zaranisa told Asha, concluding the conversation. "Thank you, but it will be fine." An hour later, she started to believe it would be fine when Officer Kulkarni offered her a cup of tea and advice. "You need to really beat the crap out of this one leg. Finish the matter once and for all." "Oh, but how can I beat her when she is a cripple?" But if you don't beat people like that, you will have to deal with them over and over again. Just whack her, and I will handle it if she complains. Don't worry." Zaranisa thought the officer's friendliness might also be a request for payment. A male officer named Tokali was less subtle. He regularly demanded bribes from the family, since people squatting on airport land were not allowed to run businesses. "You owe me for so many months," he said when he saw her. "Have you been hiding from me? Now that you're here, we can settle your account." Zaranisa had more money than Fatima. Extracting some of that money was probably why she, not Fatima, had been kept in the station. She would have to pay Tokali. He would shut down their business otherwise. But she decided to give Officer Kulkarni a wet-eyed look that conveyed enormous gratitude for the advice about beating her neighbor. Then she turned her attention to a cup of milky tea. It was dusk, and in Anawati, Kakashin was fuming. Sitting in the clear, guarding the family's things, she could see her panicked brothers spading cement, trying to finish before the police followed up and asked for money. Kakashin could also see through Fatima's open door, where she was swaying on crutches to a cassette tape of Hindi film songs turned up loud. Upon returning from the police station, Fatima had painted her face more extravagantly than usual. A shining bindi on her forehead, black kajal around her eyes, red lipstick. She looked as if she were about to step onto a stage. Kakashin couldn't hold her tongue. "The police are keeping my mother because of the lies you told, and you're dressing up and dancing like some film heroine?" A fresh fight began on the Maidan. "Bitch, I can put you in the police station too," Fatima shouted. "I won't leave it. I will put your family in a trap." Isn't what you've done enough? Getting my mother arrested? I should twist off your other leg for that." The audience of neighbors reformed for this lively tamasha. No one had ever seen Kakashin angry. She was usually a mediator among Anawadi women. Now, with her flashing, tear-spangled eyes, she looked like Parvati in that soap opera, Kahani Gar Gar Ki. "You may twist my leg, but I'll do worse to you," Fatima said. "You say you're married, but where's your husband? Did he find out you prostitute yourself to other men?" Hearing his daughter's virtue disparaged, Karam came outside. Being called a whore was not Kakashin's central worry. She said to her father, "Have you lost track of the hour? It's almost night, and mother is still in the station." "Run and see if your mother is okay," Karam instructed Murchi. To Fatima, he said, "Listen, beggar, we'll finish this work, then we stay out of each other's business forever." Inside the hut, Abdul was bagging up shards of brick. The cooking shelf was now installed. For some days, Abdul had imagined his mother's pleasure at seeing it done. Instead, she was being held by the police. The floor was half rubble, half wet cement, awaiting tiles his father had not yet bought. The installment plan television, stored in the brothel keeper's house, had been broken by the man's son. Abdul's older brothers and sisters had been frightened by all the shouting, and his father, surveying the wreck of his home, appeared to be losing his mind. Suddenly, Karam stormed back to Fatima's doorway. "Half-wit," he shouted, "you lied and said my wife beat you, so now I'm going to make you recall what a real beating feels like." On second thought, he wouldn't do the hitting himself. "Abdul," he called to his son, "come and beat her." Abdul froze. Though he had obeyed his father all his life, he wasn't about to hit a disabled woman. Fortunately, his older sister intervened. "Father, calm down," she ordered. "Mother will handle this when she gets home." Kakashin understood where the family authority resided in a crisis. As she led Karam home, he called over his shoulder, "One leg, tell your husband that if this is how you treat our years of kindness, I want half of what we spent to make this wall." "Yes, you will need your small change for your own funeral," Fatima replied. "I'm going to hurt you all." Murchi soon returned from his police station reconnaissance. His mother, apparently unharmed, was sitting quietly with a female officer. Relieved, Kakashin started dinner. At this hour, cooking fires were being lit all over Anawati, the spumes converging to form a great smoke column over the slum. In the Hyatt, people staying on the top floors would soon start calling the lobby. "A big fire is coming toward the hotel," or "I think there's been an explosion." The complaint about the cow dung ash settling in the hotel swimming pool would start half an hour later. And now came one more fire in Fatima's hut. Fatima's 8-year-old daughter, Nori, had come home for dinner, but the wooden door wouldn't open when she pushed. Inside, a love song was blasting, and she thought her mother was so busy dancing she'd forgotten the hour. Nori ran to get her mother's friend, Cynthia. Cynthia couldn't open the door either, so she lifted Nori up to a hole near the roof of the hut, a hole that Nori proudly called their window. "What do you see, Nori?" "She's pouring kerosene on her head." "Don't, Fatima!" Cynthia yelled, trying to make her voice heard over the music. Seconds later, the film song was overwhelmed by a whoosh, a small boom, and an 8-year-old screaming, "My mother! On fire!" Kekashin shrieked. The brothel keeper was the first across the Maidan, 3 boys fast behind, throwing their weight against the door until it broke. They found Fatima thrashing on the floor, smoke pouring off her skin. At her side was a yellow plastic jug of kerosene, overturned, along with a vessel of water. She had poured cooking fuel over her head, lit a match, then doused the flames with water. "Save me!" she shouted. The brothel keeper tensed. Something low on Fatima's back was still burning. He grabbed a blanket and smothered the flame as a vast crowd formed outside the hut. All day these Muslim garbage people had been fighting so loudly. Didn't she think of her daughters before she did this? "She's okay now," the brothel keeper announced, rolling away some cooking pots he'd knocked on top of her in his haste to extinguish the fire. "Alive, no problem." He pulled Fatima up. When he let go, she flopped back down, howling. People took note of the upturned vessel of water. "She's a fool then," said an old man. "She wanted to burn herself a little, create a drama, and instead she burned herself a lot." "It is because of these people that I have done this," Fatima cried out, her voice astonishingly clear. Everyone knew which people she meant. Kekashin stopped, sobbing long enough to issue a command to her brothers and father. "Run! Go! She said she was going to trap us. She might say we have set her on fire." "A police case now. They're finished," a neighbor said, watching the Hussein boys tear past the public toilet in the general direction of the Hotel Lila with its $800 suites. "Water," Fatima was pleading. Her face was red and black. "But if she dies while you give her water, the ghosts will get inside you," someone said. "Ghosts of women are the worst. Years go by and they don't leave you be." A luckless teenage girl named Priya finally brought the water. Priya, one of the poorest girls in Anawadi, sometimes helped Fatima cook and care for her children in exchange for food. She was said to have 2 ghosts inside her already. "Stupid people. They say it's bad to give water after a burn." This was a new voice, crisper than the others. Asha's voice. She was standing at the back of the crowd. People turned. "Then tell her not to drink. Asha, stop her." "But how do I snatch it away?" Asha said. "If it's her last moment, I don't want to take a dying woman's curse. What if she passed right then?" Manju came out. Her mother ordered her away. Manju's best friend Meena came closer. It was unspeakable what she saw. Fatima writhing in a brown 2-piece outfit with pink flowers on the front and back, most of the flowers now burned away. Where the flowers had been, strips of skin were hanging. Meena ran away to be sick. Felt she'd be sick her whole life, what she'd seen. "How will I get to the hospital?" Fatima was saying. "My husband isn't here." "Someone should get an auto rickshaw and take her to Cooper Hospital. All these idiots are just staring. She's going to die before our eyes." "But if you take her to Cooper, the police will say you were the one to set her on fire." "Asha should take the one leg to the hospital," someone said. "She's Shiv Sena. The police won't fuck with her." Fatima's eyes zeroed in on Asha. "Teacher," she cried, "how can I walk and go when I'm like this?" "I will pay for the auto rickshaw," Asha replied, "but I have people waiting for me. I am too busy to go myself." The other Anawadians watched as Asha strode back to her hut. "I offered to pay for the rickshaw, but why should I have gone?" Asha told her husband later, at home. "It was a fight between these garbage people, and who knows what happens when you get involved. Anyway, Zeronisa should have taken my offer of help at the police station. She doesn't understand the basic thing. You pay early, it costs less later on. You put money in the one leg's hand like she's a beggar. You stop it before it gets to this hysterical level. Now it will be a police case, and she'll need a lawyer. Does she think the lawyer will do the work first before taking the money? Does the midwife wait to get paid? Even when the baby dies, the midwife collects her fee. But I wash my hands of her. That family and their dirty money, haram kai pasa. She smiled. What the one leg should do is tell the police. I was born Hindu, and these Muslims taunted me and set me on fire because I'm Hindu. Then these guys would be inside the prison forever. It was 8 p.m. now, the sky above the Maidan purple as a bruise. Everyone had decided that when Fatima's husband returned from his garbage sorting work, he could take his wife to the hospital. The adults drifted back to their dinners, while a few boys waited to see if Fatima's face would come off. That had happened to a woman who had rented a room from Asha. The woman's husband had left her, and she, unlike Fatima, had torched herself thoroughly. The woman's charred face skin had stuck to the floor, and Rahul claimed that her chest had sort of exploded and that you could see straight through her heart.